As we go beyond the pages, thanks to Akello Digital Library, I'm looking forward to this week's conversation. Our guest is Emily Nemapare, who is the CEO of N Media and the host of The N Show. Make sure you tune in on this riveting conversation and the journey that she takes us. You can't believe how much I've been looking forward to this sit down.
I'm taking a deep breath. Okay.
I know you are.
A leap of faith today, a leap of faith.
You took me aback when you said this is your first interview.
Absolutely.
I mean, what an honor. What an honor. And I think it's a good place to start. It's a discussion around books and life and things. It's not too bad.
But I also think it's you.
Okay.
So, yeah. I don't know if I could have done it with anyone. So
you're just trying to make me cry. Okay. No.
But thanks for having me.
Wow.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. Okay. So clearly you're someone I admire. It might not be clear to you, but you're someone I admire. You're open-hearted. I think you're thoughtful. You think about things. You want to explore things. You're curious. So I think for this episode, we're like, yes, this is the right kind of mind to talk about a book that's important to you. And then I kind of sucked in my breath when you chose the book that you chose.
Yes.
Okay. Notes on Grief by the superstar Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. Okay. So straight away I was like, okay, M is a real one. Tell me why you chose Notes on Grief.
So first and foremost, when you told me about this opportunity, I actually said to you today, I don't know the last time I read a book. Like, honestly,
yes.
I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to be like that person who says, I read a book every week. No, that's not me.
Yeah.
Life has been very hectic. And so thank you also for re-energizing the love of literature and putting that back in my life, because I thought that was some real big value add in the process. So why did I choose that? So I looked around and I just went on the internet and I said, all these beautiful African women who are writing, Zimbabweans, all over the continent, who is writing something that, number one, resonates with me in the space that I'm in now, but I think also something that I can relate to. I didn't want to choose a book that I could talk fictitiously about. I wanted to really immerse myself into it. And, it was a journey. So this book spoke to me because I've recently had a lot of loss in my life. And I felt like talking about it is my healing. But when I read the Notes on Grief, I realized that was her way of healing.
Yeah.
And then I started asking myself, so how many other people are going through the same thing? And that's exactly why I wanted to share this.
Okay.
So it's going to be one, I hope we're not going to be crying throughout this, but there's also a happiness in the journey of recovering from grief.
Okay. So I know that on your platforms, you've shared a little bit about your journey. But I think it's fair for those who don't know that you just sort of kind of talk us through, I guess, the grief that you've been going through.
Sure.
Yeah. It's back to back kind of almost.
Yeah. So you hear about people who've lost loved ones back to back, and you're kind of like, when it's next door, you're like, oh my gosh, that's really sad. But when it happens to you, it hits you with such a depth that it takes the wind out of your
sails.
Your sails. Absolutely. So my mom was sick. She had been sick for a while. She was battling all these different ailments. My mom was about 82 years old.
Yeah.
And first and foremost, her character, she was bigger than life. So I
see where you got it from.
I never thought that she would one day leave. And I call it leaving because I don't think to this day I can call it passing on.
Yeah.
Because there's so much finality in that.
Yeah.
So my mom passed on in January, and it was very sudden. She had gone through some serious bouts of different ailments, but she always recovered. And that's the thing with illnesses. Hey?
Yeah.
They'll make you feel like, oh no, she's gonna recover again. But unfortunately, she went through a very short illness. January, we lost her mid-January, and my husband, actually, who had been diagnosed with stage 4 cancer about 6 months before, stood up and Simkwashaka, he was the one who was talking and, talking about his mother-in-law who he was burying. I lost my husband in April to cancer. And I couldn't understand. I was numb. So I had just said, I'm trying to get over the loss of my mom. And then all of a sudden, Kudzai leaves me, and I can't even say he passed on.
Yeah.
He left me. And I felt such a void. So looking back, I'm actually realizing that my mom is no longer, but my husband is a different type of grieving altogether.
Yeah.
And then I started trying to unpack all these different feelings that you have when you've lost a loved one. And it has just been a journey that I don't think people talk about.
Yeah.
And I don't think people can conceptualize. So Chimamanda's book does that. I mean, I was reading it and I was like, she's putting to pen and paper what I'm feeling, and sometimes you can't put your feelings on paper. Yeah.
I think it's interesting because I find a lot of people talk about how grief is a very personal journey.
Oof.
And then for you to find connection with that in the book, because I think she wrote the book when she lost her father.
Yes.
And she was processing.
Yes.
And I think so you have that parallel. You lost a parent.
Yep.
And I'm sure that's not the only, I'm sure it encompasses other parts of grief, but just talk through like those parallels of losing a parent.
So losing a parent. Okay, losing a parent is a joint grief. So so when I lost my mom, my sisters were also grieving.
Okay.
So it wasn't a singular grief in that it was all centered on Emily.
Okay.
I was crying and I was like, oh, my mom, yes. But I also realized that my sisters were going through it as well because we had a common source that we had lost. And so we kind of rallied up. And as girls, we kind of said, you know what do we do? Now we're by ourselves. We've literally been stripped of the one person, the matriarchy, who had kept us together, the glue in the family. And then that absolutely brought us together. Yeah. So in the absence of my mom, all of those little silos, because in families, you have silos. We all know it. The sister who's the sounding board, the sister who's the authoritative one, we all have these different characters. But when you're stripped of a parent, my dad is late, so we were literally just the three of us. It brought us on a different level. So, but it was joint. So I think when I read her talking about the loss of her dad, she spoke about her siblings and how they all had different roles, and her brother, who was actually physically with her dad when he passed on, and just how she was out of the country, she was in the States, and being in the diaspora and having to hear about your parent not being, present anymore. Yeah. It's really gut-wrenching. And so my sister wasn't present when we lost our mom. Oh. She was in the States, and my other sister and I were here. So there were so many parallels. There were so many things where I was like, okay, so that's how she was feeling. That's how she was processing. And it gave me an appreciation of grief from a different lens. But when you're grieving, you kind of get consumed in your own grief, and you forget that other people are grieving as well. Yeah. So this was such an aha moment for me to say, you know what, it would be interesting for my sisters to also read the book as well. Okay. and see.
Did you get them to read the book?
So I haven't.
Okay.
They don't even know I'm on the show today. So this is
going to be a big...
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah.
So... in other words, the way that Chimamanda sort of framed that grief gave you insight into your sister's grief before you guys were able to talk about her perspective from her.
So to a certain extent, because one of the healing processes that we then embarked on, we took our grief onto the Ian show. And we did a 2-part series of sisters talking about grief. And when we did that, I remember sitting through some of it and I was like, oh, wow, that's how she felt. Oh, it was an incredible opportunity for me to have that insight. But this is deeper. The way Chimamanda explains and unravels, she's got such a gift to make you feel like you were there. So she says that her daughter, and can I just reference to it? She says, my 4-year-old daughter says I scared her. She gets down on her knees to demonstrate her small clenched fist rising and falling, and her mimicry makes me see myself as I was, utterly unraveling, screaming and pounding the floor. The news is like a vicious uprooting. I'm yanked away from the world I had known since childhood. So this is her in the diaspora.
Yeah.
Her mom and her dad is with other siblings.
Yeah.
When I read this, I said, oh my Lord, what was that moment when my sister heard that my mom was late? I began to question, who was she with? Did she have the adequate support system? I was in the hospital with family and friends. I had that support, but my sister wasn't. She didn't have that support.
Yeah.
So it just kind of gives you a lens of losing someone and the sacrifices people have made to be in the diaspora and to go through loss so many millions of miles away. Yeah. So
I think it's just the way you're speaking. You brought up this distance, right, that your sister had when she found out about the news. But for me, I think because my father recently passed away, I had a different type of distance with him. So we were in the same country, in the same place, but he wasn't really in my life. So there was an emotional distance, even though physically the person was there. So I think the understanding and the process was different. I mean, we got to go see him in the hospital. He wasn't well. And so I was preparing myself for a goodbye at some point. But that hit differently. To look at someone physically close, but then you were not able to have that emotional closeness. And then you're now going to grieve about, and what does that look like?
Yes.
And it's very complicated and challenging at times because it's apparent.
And I think one of the things that Chimamanda speaks about is you don't understand how you will grieve until you're grieving.
Yeah.
That line shook me because when I read it, I was like, like when people say, oh, value your mom whilst you still have her. Yeah, but I don't understand what a life is without her. So
exactly.
What am I supposed to do? How am I supposed to prepare myself so that when my mom is gone, I will have done everything that I should have.
Yeah.
So nothing prepares you for it. I think the big thing for me has been prayer. That's the one thing you have to go back to basics. You have to go back to factory settings, and that's God. So yeah.
In our culture, Shona culture, tunabata maoko.
Yes.
Right? And so I imagine it's a very necessary and crucial step in how we grieve culturally, right? We come, we sit, we cry with you, and then we leave.
Yes.
And I just wanted to understand how that experience was for you in terms of, did you find it healing? Did you find it enough, if I can say that?
Yeah. I'm going to read from what she wrote about that.
Okay.
Because I don't think I could have put it to words, to be honest with you. She says, so it's really talking about disbelief. She says a condolence register must be placed by the front door, and my sister goes off to buy a bolt of white lace to cover the table, and my brothers buy a hardcover notebook, and already people are bending to write in the book. I think, go home. Why are you coming to our house to write in that alien notebook? How dare you make this thing true? You know? Somehow these well-wishers have become complicit. I feel myself breathing air that is bittersweet with my own conspiracies. Needle pricks of resentment flood through me at the thought of people who are more than 88 years old, older than my father and alive and well. Oh, what the audacity of that, you know? My anger scares me, my fear scares me, and somewhere in there is shame. 2, why am I so enraged and so scared?
This was my question. Hearing this was my question.
So, once again, this is why I relate to this so much.
Yeah.
You sit there and you're like, every person who comes and pays their condolences is just another nail in the coffin of affirmation to say that this person is no longer there. So at some stage, you don't even see it as comfort. You're like, guys, at some stage, I had to be told when I lost my husband, Emily, people are coming to pay condolences to you, because I was trying to get things ready. I was like, is there water? Is there all of this? And people are like, sit down. People are, if you're not there, they have no one to pay their condolences to.
Yeah.
It was such a space of defeat that then turns into anger, that then turns into resentment, because you're just like, the best thing for me is just to keep quiet. And in your silence, that's where all these emotions are just churning and churning and churning. And if you don't let them go, eventually fast forward maybe 6 months later, that's why depression is such a big issue after grief. That's why people can't move on. That's why you'll find a lot of men also follow with the passing on after their wives pass on, because there's nothing, you'll find like there's nothing to live for. So to your question, that anger is real. You cannot, it's not logical. But you're like, everyone who comes and says, Nematambutsiko, who are you saying that to? Why are you saying that to me?
That's so interesting. I mean, not to sound clinical, but it's something I would have never thought of, right? You imagine the support of other people is what you need. But yes, the grief is complicated like that, and it brings out different emotions. And then it touches on, I guess, how we respond to things as well as a culture, right? And I like that you brought up the passing of your husband as well in that context, because I would imagine a lot of things shift in that space, right? I think when we spoke before, you talk about family dynamics also changing.
Oh, yeah.
And all of this because of the death of this loved one who's your husband.
Yeah.
So how did they shift for you?
I think it starts the day that you hear that he's gone. That's when you realize that as much as you were in love for so many years and you nurtured this love and you had children and you were planning on having grandkids together, and I planned on him walking my girls down the aisle, and all of these dreams that you had, because we planned a lot of stuff. You then realize that mun, he was a Nemapare, and the Nemapare clan then kicks in because he was their person. So that's when culture and tradition teach you the gravity of what it means to be a part of a clan.
Yeah.
You may have wanted to bury someone in a specific place, but when the clansmen, when the elders of the family come in and say something different, you have got to back down. You have to be respectful, because that person is a part of a bigger culture. And that's reality. That is African culture. My husband had said where he wanted to be buried, and it was respected. And I have a great family support system in my in-laws, who I can tell you, my grieving was made easy because of the relationships that were, because of on the back of the relationships that we had built. But I know that not everyone is able to go through that. And so it just kind of says to you, culture versus the little bubble that you were in with your loved one. Yeah. How do you manage the two? You have to compromise. Yeah. And you have to be willing to understand that this person, you shared him with so many other people. It cannot be everything that you want. You have to understand that he had other people who also said, but I grew up with him. Yeah. He's my person. But this one, he's my best cousin. You have to compromise. In your grief, you have to compromise. Yeah.
Was the book somehow able to talk you through, prepare you? I don't know what the word is for how continuous grief is. Like, because right now you're still in that stage, in that process.
Funny enough, I think Chimamanda is still grieving as well.
Yeah.
I honestly, and it's a good question you bring up, because I was seeking at the end of the book an aha moment that kind of said, you know what, there's light at the end of the tunnel, and this is the big moment and everything. But the reality is that you will live with that grief until you die, until it just wanes. The gravity of it, the feel of it, how it impacts your life. That's what changes over a period of time. Yeah. How you translate it into your everyday life is what changes, but it never goes away. Yeah. So my dad passed on years ago, but the triggers that I have of my dad. This morning I was going through some content, and I saw my cousin had posted my tete, my dad's sister, and I saw my dad. I literally was like, oh my gosh, look at the eyes, look at this. Yeah. And I sent my cousin a message, and I said, you know what, I'm sorry I don't give enough love to this iconic woman who holds our clan on her back. But I want to honor her, and I want to say thank you for all that you're doing for her. Just understand that we are giving you support and we're loving you as well. Yeah. So it's the little triggers, it'll never go away. Yeah. It'll never go away.
And I guess that's what Chimamanda wrote about as well. Yeah. So the book was more of a beginning. Yes. The end, when you go to the end, it was more of a beginning rather than
an end.
Okay.
Yeah.
But you bringing up that, I think there's a way that people continue to live, right, in that sense, which is positive.
Yes.
When they've had all these beautiful relationships with people, and that feeds back to you. And hopefully that gives you other dimensions of the person's character outside of the role you know them as. So for your mom, maybe you heard different stories about her or things that warmed your heart to know that she did.
Yes.
Is that, yeah?
That I resonate with that deeply. So when my mom passed on, she was a United Methodist. We're strong United Methodists. Okay. I'm going to say the strong United Methodist people, second generation. And so my dad was a pastor. And so my mom was a Maimfundisi. And so if you know Maimfundisi.
So you're a PK.
I'm a PK girl. I'm a PK.
Okay.
And if you understand the culture of PKs and church and what that means when a Maimfundisi passes on, you understand the power of Ruadzano. Mm-hmm. And at my mom's funeral, someone took an aerial view of her coffin, and she was surrounded by close to about 150 women in uniform. Yeah. And they were singing. And the way they were singing and the depth of what they were singing about, they were bidding farewell to my mom. I clearly was in the moment. When I was in the moment, I wanted to whip out my phone, and I was like, Emily, stop it. What are you doing? Live in the moment. Yeah. This is not a picture thing. I took it in, but someone managed to capture that for us. And I go back to that because I saw her mourning from a different perspective.
Like literally
from a different perspective. Yeah. And then also the testimonials that people share. I didn't know my husband knew so many people who over his 28-year journey as being a business person in the field that he was in, he had built some of the most solid relationships where the business is still carrying on right now because on the back of those relationships. I had a new sense of respect for him. I had an opportunity to be like, okay, I was married to this guy, but clearly he had all these different layers and pieces around him that made him the Emily Nemapare that he was. And the community and the fraternity that was there in the field that he worked in really came together and mourned him. And I thought that was such an awesome moment. And it also is a moment to self-reflect and say, Emily, if you were to pass on today, what would the word be? What would the word be on the street? What would people say? What would people feel? Because they don't have to say anything. No. They don't have to feel anything. So yeah.
Basically speaking to the legacy and the impact that someone leaves behind.
Yes.
Okay. Well, I think you've said so many things to digest. I think for me, you brought in different angles that I hadn't thought of, especially the anger one. I think that really shocked me and took me back. And I think it's a testament to you can only know when you're in it. So I think kind of on that note of digesting, we're going to move into the next section. We're just going to have a few questions, rapid fire, and then get back into maybe some more moments that spoke to you from the book.
Great.
Yeah. Okay, so this is our rapid fire question segment. So nothing too hectic, you don't have to worry. Just some light questions, and then you just say whatever comes to mind.
Okay.
Okay, if you could switch places with any character from a book for a day, who would it be and why?
Oh, Nancy Drew.
Nancy Drew?
Yeah.
You want to be investigating people's business.
You don't understand. Nancy Drew was the bomb diggity. This girl had everything happening at a young age. She was unrelentless. She was, oh my goodness, she was that chick that you would not want on the case.
Okay.
Because no was never good enough for her.
Okay. I can see why you picked her. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
What's your go-to snack or drink when you're reading a book?
Okay, I'm wondering, should I tell the truth or should I lie? For those who are listening, definitely a glass of wine.
Okay.
A glass of wine will do it.
What was the lie?
Coffee.
Okay, all right,
Yeah.
okay. What's one book you think everyone should read at least once in their lifetime?
I'm going to be so philosophical. The Bible.
Okay.
I think we should all read the Bible.
Even if we're not Christian?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just out of curiosity to understand what this famous book that everyone, billions of people tap into, what is it? Yeah. So it's my challenge, and I would want everyone else to be challenged by it.
Fair enough. Do you judge a book by its cover when choosing to read?
Absolutely.
Or do you actually... Okay.
Yes.
You just take a look at it and be like, I think I like this.
It has to look good. I mean, maybe it's because I'm a marketer and my profession is about looking, what is visual is also appealing. That's the first stage. Then obviously the second stage is to read about what it's about. And then the author is also very important for me as well, because they're authors who have consistently given their best 100% over a period of time. So yeah, books matter. The covers, how it looks, how it feels. Yep.
No judgment.
No judgment.
Okay. But you have to choose a different answer from Nancy Drew now. Okay. So if you could be best friends with a character from a book, who would it be?
Best friends. Okay, so there is that Sydney. Is it Sydney Sheldon?
Okay. I used to read those. Okay, go on.
Did you just get a little flashback
Yes,
there?
I did.
Yeah, but I wanted to say Sydney Sheldon characters. were always very interesting for me.
Okay.
Because I felt like it was real life, closer
They were
to real
doing
life.
crazy things,
Yeah, they were
but
crazy
there was
things.
something very realistic about it, right?
Yes. So I could actually see myself in
those intriguing political.
Yeah, and then I started challenging myself to see if I could figure out the ending of the books before I finished the book.
And were you able to?
Half the time I was pretty good, and then that translated into my movie watching. So now I can't watch a movie without my kids and I going, okay, so what's the end of the movie? And we try and figure out what the
you're a
end
plot
is.
detective, just like
Girl,
me.
yes, that's me.
Okay. Well, that ties into my last question, which is, which book would you like to see as a film, to the best of your knowledge? Because some books have already been made into films and we don't know. So just pick a book that you think you'd love to see as a film.
Charlotte's Web.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I think as a young person I started reading when I was very young. I used to imagine what that would be, just everything that was so intricately described in Charlotte's Web. I would have wanted to visually see it as a child.
Yeah.
I think it would have been a very interesting adaptation.
Okay, so you're saying you wish there had been a film of Charlotte's Web when you were younger?
No, now, even for my kids, because we've stripped the enjoyment of watching, of reading.
Yeah.
So if our kids can read something and then visually see the representation, I think that connection would be really interesting for them. So what they're reading, they can't see because there aren't movies on them.
Yeah.
But I go back to that. Even if my talk about Nancy Drew, it's because that's where I'm founded. That's where my love of reading comes from. But I just feel like if Charlotte's Web could be a Black sister version in the ghetto or something like that.
Okay.
Yeah, with a twist to it.
Yeah.
I would love to see that.
You'd love to see it?
Yeah.
Maybe you're the one to make it?
Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe.
I can see that for you. I wanted to go off topic and now start talking about
We
films.
can go off topic, girl.
But I'm gonna stay focused
with the books.
Okay, yes, with the books, because our next segment, I think it's really important but also interesting. So we normally do like a quote that we want you to read from the book, but I know that to help you through this process of grief, you were journaling. And you tried to write down your feelings. I also journal, so I understand how sometimes things can just pour out of you and then it makes sense later.
Yeah.
But you got the emotion out. So if you can you share like a quote or two from your journal?
Sure.
Yeah.
And when I was reading through these quotes, so let me just give you a bit of background on this. When my husband passed on, I had started writing. I turned 50, maybe about 2 years before.
Still unbelievable. Okay.
I had turned 50 2 years before, and I had said on my 50th birthday, I want to write 50 lessons for every year that I have been blessed with. So I started writing the book, and then he passed on, and then Mom passed on. And then so it changed the trajectory of my book.
Yeah.
And I'll just read the dedication first, and then I'll share one or two inserts. So the dedication, this is going to be a coffee table kind of book, the 50 lessons. So I said, I started writing 50 lessons about 2 years ago during my birthday month. During my birthday month, my husband was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. My mom was critically ill in hospital after falling and breaking her leg at 81 years of age in 3 separate places. As I battled with many other life challenges, I realized that my celebration of 50 almost seemed trivial. At the time, I had written half the book. It didn't take me long to realize that I needed to take a pause on all of my personal projects so that I could ride the tide of life. Fast forward 2 years later, I've laid to rest both the love of my life and my beloved mother. To say the least, you will find the last 6 lessons are from the depths of my heart, a farewell to my husband. if you are grieving or have lost a loved one, I'm hoping that reading this will show you that God is a merciful God who can help you through the darkest of times. And that is my biggest life lesson. I dedicate this book to Eva Joyce Kudiwa Rugayo, who birthed me and made me into the power woman I am today. And Ngozi Nemapare, who taught me that love is not about pain, that I am enough, and that I am the only one who can limit me from doing anything I want. Rest in eternal peace. And so that was the dedication that I wrote. I was angry.
When you wrote it?
No. I was angry at the beginning of my vlogging or my blogging journey.
Yeah.
And so I actually was reading and I could see where I was beginning to feel a bit like it was under.
Okay.
Should I share one more?
Yes.
Okay.
I was just gonna say that paragraph is so full of love, though I feel like you just were surrounded by love.
At the time, yeah.
But I mean, okay. I think it's still with you.
You think so?
Yes.
I hope so. I hope so. Because I realize that if I don't talk about it, love can, there's a thin line between love and hate. Eh?
Okay.
So you can turn something that you loved so much when you're denied it, when you don't understand why it was taken away from you, it can turn quickly into hate. Yeah. And you can illogically say, why did you leave me? Why did you? And so there are inserts that I wrote where I woke up and I was just like, Ngozi, you should have been here today. Why did you leave? So my next one is nights were the worst for me because within the stillness of the house, memories just flooded my consciousness, flashbacks, all the emotions that I had bottled up during the funeral. I realized that my real mourning had only just begun. My heart was literally broken. That phrase literally took on a new meaning. It felt empty. I felt unable to string two sentences together. As people came to pay their condolences, I watched them, and in my head I would think, Kuti, they muchiziva my pain, but you don't. But I kept quiet and just tried to get through each day. I quickly realized I needed to find scripture that would help me because no human could. I was guided by Psalms 46, verse 10. I needed to be still and understand that God was working on me. For what? Amen. But I had to walk in faith. And so, this is some of what I've been writing.
That's a beautiful paragraph. I don't know how to phrase it, but it's like, I don't know if it's equal to say the amount of love that you experienced and loss is what's kind of directing the amount of grief and anger. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yes.
If you hadn't had the love of your life, or if you didn't have this beautiful relationship with your mom, how would you feel?
You're right, because I used to always say, even if I don't find love again, I was loved like that. And so a part of me also says, it's okay if I never find it again. Because some people go through life and they never find it.
They don't know it. Yeah.
And that's what keeps me going. My mom, I'm a last born.
Oh, I see. That makes sense.
I'm a last born. So a lot of my life I grew up with my mom just because my sisters were at school and overseas and everything. And I was my mom's handbag.
Yeah.
There were things that she used to tell me where we would just be laughing and having fun and everything. And so I'm okay with that because I used to always say to my mom, you've loved me so much. And she used to go on Facebook. She was learning how to use Facebook. She used to go on Facebook and she would be the one, even on a random post, I love you, Emily.
Oh.
So she told me she loved me. She told me there was no question about it, both of them.
Yeah.
And so I think that's what that's what you're seeing.
Yeah,
in
and
the
feeling
writing. That's what you're
as you're
feeling
talking
in the writing.
Yeah.
I'm in pain, but there's also this understanding that, I was loved enough to be able to continue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And probably extend that love to your children.
Oh, yes. My children have been my foundation. I think every mom says that, but I understand why every mom would say that, because children have such a blessed nature around them where they know when to come in and give you a hug. They know when to keep quiet sometimes and not and allow you to mourn. They didn't allow me to sleep by myself in my bedroom for like a year. They would exchange. Nothing do like I don't know if they said this consciously, but they wouldn't allow me to be alone for a long period of time because they just felt like they needed to be that support. So I owe everything to my family, my support system. Yeah, they've been awesome.
Mentioning support systems, I know that verse from the Bible is the one that you really kind of helped you through your grieving process. But I think you also mentioned that it also showed up in different ways for you as well.
Yes.
I mean, just explain that a little bit.
Oh, my Lord.
Because I think right now I'm sounding mysterious, but
sounding cryptic.
Yeah.
But there was in the middle of my mourning, and I think when I was posting stuff on Instagram, there's a lady who follows me on Instagram who sent a bouquet. All of a sudden, I was in the office and the guys downstairs said, my Nemapare, there's someone who's here who's got a bouquet of stuff for you. And I was like, what? Where is this coming from? This lady comes up and she hands me this beautiful hamper. And the same verse was on pretty much on every single item in there. And it was an affirmation for me of sometimes, number one, when you're grieving, there are people who are praying for you who you don't even know. I'd never met her. She's a part of the fraternity of marketers. She was from another bank. And I just was so humbled by her heart. And I don't know if she really understands what that did for me.
Yeah.
I felt like I was a part of a bigger community, and I felt like I had supporters who were not physically present, but spiritually and emotionally present, just cheering me on. And so I just want to urge people, like, if you feel moved about doing something, as much as it may be a small gesture for you, you have to just do it because you don't know how it's going to hit home for that person.
So what was the verse that was in the gift basket?
Be still and know that I am God. And there was a mug cup, there was a pen, there was a book on grieving. And to this very day, we do devotions with that book. I don't think she understood what she was doing. Like, honestly.
Feel like God sent her?
She was definitely sent by God. She was definitely sent by God. And I really want to give her a big thank you. And, I'm hesitant to share her name because I don't know if she wants it to be known. But Cynthia, you know yourself. I won't say the surname. Cynthia, you know yourself, and thank you so much. And I really appreciate her. May God just be with her and every other person who has just reached out in that way.
Sometimes
to all the Cynthias out there who have made such a difference in people's lives, and may they continue to be blessed in that way.
I think that's the perfect note for us to wrap up. I could talk to you all day about everything. I wanted to go all which ways, but thank you for sharing such a pivotal and important part of your life journey. And like I said, we're here going beyond the pages, and you can see how this is so real. And I feel like so many people connect to this. Thank you for sharing that moment with me and with us on the Thando Book Club.
Thank you, Tendai. It's been such an honor. And thank you for getting me out of my comfort zone. But I thought it was an important one. I didn't want to come and talk about things every day that we all talk about every day, but just to understand that grief is not a bad word.
Yeah.
Grief is a journey, and it's one that you carry by yourself, but just know that you're not by yourself. You carry it, it's an individual thing, but you have a community that can actually support you on it. So yeah, thank you for having me.
Thank you. What an amazing journey with an amazing guest. It's been an illuminating conversation on a very tricky and touchy topic, but it was so important. So once again, thanks to Em for sharing this moment with us. And of course, these kinds of conversations are only made possible by this season's sponsor, Akello Digital Library. So make sure you tune in next week for another riveting conversation on Thando Book Club.